So, Greg, you and I are, I would say, advocates for the Scrum framework. We both teach it professionally. We both use it, and we talk to a lot of people who are excited to help their teams or their organizations use Scrum well. And so, a common question that I get is, we've got these people who are resistant to Scrum, who are sort of pushing back, or just making life difficult, making the transition, making the application of Scrum difficult. How do you overcome that resistance? How do you deal with it? How do you effectively continue to help the organization use it in the face of this kind of resistance? So I've got a couple of thoughts, but what do you think about that question?
Well, there's kind of two scenarios that come to mind for me, and it's easily could fractal into many other
Yeah,
versions of this. There's the small company engagement, and then there's also the giant company
mm,
engagement or giant organization engagement. And I've
sure.
seen resistance at both levels before. And then at a I guess kind of meta level, there's either the question of, do we get started using this thing called Scrum, and that has been the case for a lot of these legacy type of I'd say entities or organizations, especially within government infrastructure. Like, well, we're finally using Scrum. They're just getting started. Well, that's a long time because it's been out for 30 years and they're just getting started.
Right. It's not a new
Um,
framework anymore.
it is
Yeah.
not a new framework. And so I think maybe the most common application here is Scrum has started to leak in somehow. People are using some Scrummy type of things. Maybe they're using the full-fledged Scrum framework or whatever the case might be. And there might be some traction that's being gained, and then there's this general sense of like, hold on, what's going on? This is different than what we're used to, or why is this team wanting to go out and do their own thing? Where's my report? Or there's something from a management organizational level that tends to be challenged either outright or kind of maybe unintentionally, that challenges managers and leaders to really question, like, is this thing something we want? Because what am I supposed to do? My job title and my responsibilities require that I manage people's time, that I manage
Mm,
people's performance, and that I judge that performance. And then that shows up in a spreadsheet, and I'm judged by C-levels and directors and VPs. And you're just telling me to be cool with this thing? I'm not. So I guess the first thing kind of calming down from that example is asking generically, what's the concern? And empathize with the people who are feeling that concern, because there's probably some legitimate concerns. They've been given their job and their title for a reason within the organization. And you're suggesting now that it's going to be replaced by a group of people who self-manage. That's
yeah.
frightening. That's
Yeah.
frightening. In what world has that ever worked out in, a classic project kind of mindset? You have to manage the people. I'm trying to imagine in construction industry, Jason, if I were to say, hey, we're going to get started with this project. So, hey team, go get them. Would it just magically build within a very tight time frame within 5 months? Or would I be saying, why aren't these people talking? Usually there's an issue when we just say, hey, go play this brand new sport, but we haven't equipped people to be able to play the sport. And I use this silly analogy, like maybe your company is all about hockey, but you can't ask them to go play professional football with hockey sticks and with ice skates. It's not going to
Yeah.
work out. You have
Right.
to equip and support them with the things that they need. And so oftentimes there's a mismatch. And I think starting with some empathy can be good.
Yeah.
I'll pause there. I could ramble more,
Em-
but
empathize and equip. I like that. That's a really good place to start. Um, I often work with companies who are applying Scrum, and it's not just brand new, like, oh, we just heard the word yesterday, but we've been trying it for a while, and we have some mixed success, and a lot of the sort of resistance that I'm either directly dealing with or more often is working with others who are dealing with that resistance. They're getting questions, they're getting pushback, and again, I've faced it myself as well as a change agent with organizations for Scrum or any other type of new practice. And I've learned over the years that There's a really bad way to answer some of these questions and a better way to answer some of these questions or deal with some of this resistance. So let me pick an example. The Scrum Guide says you need to have a daily Scrum. It needs to happen every day at the same time in the same place. And some of the resistance can be, well, why does it have to be daily? Can't we do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Can't we do this Tuesday, Thursday? Can't we just do this a few times a week? And the bad answer to the question that I myself have used is, well, because that's what Scrum is. That's what the Scrum Guide says. That's how the framework's designed. And so it needs to be a daily Scrum because the Scrum Guide says so, essentially, even if I wasn't using those specific words. It's a terrible way to answer the question, in my opinion, because I think the dirty little secret that a lot of change agents, Scrum trainers, Agile coaches, don't want to say out loud is that not a whole lot of people that aren't already Scrum enthusiasts care what the Scrum Guide says. Like appealing to a document that someone has never heard of, uh, and may be resistant to because they're feeling all those fears that you just described. Appealing to that document and saying, "Well, this document over here says so, so we have to," is just not super effective. What I have found works a whole lot better is being able to communicate the why behind some of the quote unquote rules in Scrum. And now that requires that you understand the why at a deep level. So instead of just saying, well, it's called a daily scrum, it has to be daily, we have to do it every day. It's, well, we're trying to optimize to be as adaptable as possible. And to do that, we're going to bring the team, the developers on this team together at minimum once a day. Even if we're talking outside of this event, we're going to bring all the developers together, focus on our sprint goal, and see what adaptations we need to make to our work for this sprint and make sure we're all on the same page for the plan for the next day to optimize for adaptability. And if we don't need 15 minutes, we won't take 15 minutes. But what we're not going to do is skip it all together, be penny wise and pound foolish, where we save ourselves 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, and then cost ourselves way more than that time because something that's slowing us down went unaddressed for a couple days at a time. That's a much better way to answer the question, but it requires you thinking through, why is the daily Scrum daily? What's going to happen if it doesn't work that way? Why was the Scrum framework designed this way? So understanding the why, communicating the why, the reasons, the principles, the theory behind some of the mechanics of Scrum, I think is super important.
Very good. I think if organizations stop resisting, they might appreciate the additional transparency.
Yeah,
We just talked about that in another video, I think.
we
But
did. We have to link to that.
a lot of things begin to self-heal when transparency is encouraged, and Scrum is definitely a good framework for that. So
Yeah. If I can offer, I know I just got done talking a lot, but if I can offer just one more piece of advice, this question of how do I overcome the resistance, I think is really well intended. And people who are eager to drive change can sometimes forget that this resistance, it it's often born out of legitimate concerns like you talked about and legitimate problems. Be careful not to be so on the train of driving change that you dismiss what may be legitimate problems. Like, if, again, continuing the daily Scrum discussion, like maybe people are resistant because they find the meeting ineffective, right? That might mean they need to understand the point of the meeting, or it might mean your daily Scrum's ineffective. And now it doesn't, that's not a good reason to just opt out. Like, you kind of help, you might need to coach them into being the change they want to see, so to speak. But don't just be so eager to change people's minds and to influence them and to overcome their objections like a salesperson. Sorry, salespeople, but I don't mean to castigate you there. But a lot of sales is overcoming objections, right? Don't be so focused on selling them Scrum that you forget about the adaptability in Scrum. And so take those resistance conversations as learning opportunities. Maybe there are things that need to change and you need to fix about your implementation of Scrum. Help them see that they can be a part of that. That might not only overcome the resistance, but it can also help them get more engaged as well.
Did you know we teach professional Scrum courses? If not, check the links in the description for information about how you can join one of our professional Scrum courses and hang out with us.
All right, you know the drill. This is YouTube after all, so this is where I ask you to click the thumbs up, click the subscribe button, hit the bell, or whatever else YouTube's come up with these days for you to get our videos delivered to you. Or even better, in our description below, there's a link where you can get these videos delivered straight to your inbox.